Hi, welcome to another episode of Hot Takes. Before we get into this, and it's not worth a video on its own right, but I would just like to say happy birthday to Jimmy Carter. He was not seen, I think, as a successful president, but he's certainly a long-lived one. Made 100 years of age today. Well done to him. Glad he's made it. I will say, and people may not know this, but Jimmy Carter truly is a hero. And I mean that in the genuine sense. There was a nuclear accident and a very young sailor ran into the hot zone and pulled people to safety, saving their lives. That young sailor who risked his own life was Jimmy Carter. So, might not have been a great president, but he was certainly a very brave man. And of course, subsequent, he ended up being an excellent statesman, travelling the world. Highly respected, very well liked apparently in all circles. Apparently he was a very genuinely nice man, which is unusual for people who attain the rank of president, isn't it? Most of them are bloody awful people. Anyway, having got that out of the way, I will like to say the purpose of this video, which you've seen from the thumbnail, involves Dear Jacob Rees-Mogg. Now, many people will know that Jacob has a very close relationship with Nigel, because obviously they both worked on the same TV channel. They've had conversations. They seem to be genuinely friendly with each other, and that is starting to manifest itself in a very weird way. So at the moment, you've got the Tory conference in Birmingham, and you get your main conference, and you get your main speakers and things, and they're doing obviously the big sort of beauty pageant over the potential leaders, and it's all getting very nasty, very dirty, infighty, backstabby. Lovely, wonderful watching it. Anyway, at these things they often have side events, and one of the side events is a thing called the Popular Conservative event. In the same way as like Popular Electronics or something. It's not necessarily that popular, but it's for those who are interested, are free to come along. And Jacob Rees-Mogg, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg as we should call him now, I forgot he'd been knighted, hadn't he? So Sir Jacob turned up and gave a little speech. And there was quite a few people in attendance. People want to listen to Sir Jacob, even though he's not an MP anymore. He's still very much at the heart of the Conservative Party. And indeed, should he stand again and get back in, I've always maintained he would probably make an excellent leader of the party, if nothing else, for shit and giggles. I mean, can you imagine that wonderful, posh, plummy accent? It's just, I don't know, I just like the guy, genuinely. I don't know what it is. He's charming, he's polite, he's educated, and he's never done me any harm. It doesn't matter, beside the point. Anyway, to the point, eventually. So at this event, he floated the idea out there that Conservatives should stand down from fighting certain seats. He said that the Tory party should stand aside in around 100 or so seats where Reform came second to Labour. He says, do this, have the pact, and get Reform to stand down where the Tories were second. He said, and if each of those constituencies has a party of the right that isn't splitting the right vote, he says more Tories would be elected, more Reform would be elected, and you would have a right-leaning parliament. He said, if it's either an absolute majority for the Tories, or at the very least, there'd be a working partnership between the Tories and Reform. He says this is a big and generous offer. He says both sides need to seriously consider it in order to save both parties. He says, and he acknowledges Reform is growing and growing quickly. He says, and the problem with Reform is it's taking a lot of Tory votes, and they need to shore up the Tory vote. And the best way to do it is to have a partnership, an official partnership with Reform. Now, we don't know the response from Nigel Farage yet. I would suggest he would probably be very favourable at having a clear run at maybe 100 seats. And certainly, even if only, I think the numbers were something like if only 30% of the Tories who voted Tory voted Reform instead of voting Tory, Reform would have had over 60 seats. That's a big offer from the Tories. Now, it's not officially from the Tories. Obviously, it's from Jacob. And we don't have a Tory leader yet who can, take the idea forward. It depends who it is. I think if Tom Tug on that got in, no, it'd be dead in the water. I think Jenrick or Badenoch may look favourably on it. Cleverly probably wouldn't. But it all depends on who gets in, doesn't it? But it certainly would, I think, be a good idea because ultimately, Reform is the new Conservative Party, and the Conservative Party is the rump of the Conservative Party, where the members are still Conservative, but the politicians tend not to be. And that's the problem they've got. But they need this one model, this one right model, where you're not splitting the right-wing vote. And the only way it can happen is by agreement, and that's there. Now, whether the two parties agree to do it is another matter. Whether it would be something that, should they both form the next government, would it be an official coalition? Would it be a working partnership? Would it be a supply-side partnership? Who knows? Would there just be deals done saying, look, give us a few ministers, make sure this policy, and this policy goes through, we'll back you on your mad ones. That kind of thing. That's usually what happens, the senior and the junior. Actually, what usually happens is the junior partner tends to have more of a wag, so it's the tail wagging the dog. We've seen this with the Lib Dems, and we saw it again with the Greens, with the SNP. But there we go. You can't have landslides like Labour winning again on 20% of the vote. It's just not right. Farage has said, and I think that would be his price, is proportional representation. And I think given the result of the last election, even the Tories would go with that one. So if the price was PR, they'd do it. But you can't steal votes. One argument is you can't steal votes, but you can divvy them out. Although there'll be some Conservative Party people who don't want to vote Reform, and they'll be going, well, I've got no one to vote for. It's one election. Bite the bullet. Anyway, leave it there. Thank you very much. Unbelievable that Jacob Rees-Mogg, or Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg, comes out with such a proposal. It's never been heard before. But then they've never had a challenge on the right before. We live in strange times. Thanks a lot. Bye.